When I first saw Natalia, all I could picture was Georgia. The way her skin melted off her face, the smell of her hair burning, and the sound that she made. I didn't have time to count, but there were more than I originally thought. I figured these must have been the 15 people Prudence talked about entering the flats that burned before it happened. I already knew that Natalia was one of them. Eddie and Ellie clutched Terry's skirt, trembling with fear. I wanted to help protect them, but I still couldn't help but tremble a little myself every time I caught a glimpse of those hollow voids where their eyes were. "Hi, Terry. The kids said we could borrow some sugar?" she asked menacingly, grinning at the frightened family stood next to me. After a moment or two of intense staring, Natalia finally addressed me. She appeared to be the spokesperson for the group. "How's your friend doing? It was a shame we had to end our visit. I was enjoying her company." "Don't speak about her. She's got nothing to do with you, you sick bitch," I screamed at her. I couldn't bear looking at her face again. "You don't scare me with all your freak friends. I'm not going to let you hurt this lady or her kids." Natalia chuckled. I gulped. "I may talk a good game, but I am no hero. Mere days ago, I was just a young girl excited to move in with her boyfriend, and now here I am. My boyfriend's dead. My flat is like living in my own personal horror movie, and I'm standing up challenging demonic flame neighbors to defend demonic-looking children. But when I said she didn't scare me, I meant it. Something inside me was eradicating any fear of these people. I just wanted to protect the residents. Life really does throw curveballs. I know you aren't scared. I saw it in your eyes when you stuck that big knife in my throat. That's why we're here. My brothers and sisters are not freaks. You're the freaks, thinking that your lives have meaning. We watch you people go about your day-to-day lives and your mundane routines, and nothing really changes. Your lives are pointless and disposable. That's why we set the fire all those years ago." She chuckled throughout her words. There was an animation in them, like she was a psychotic cartoon character, finally catching its prey after 138 episodes of chasing. "Those people weren't disposable," Terry mumbled, barely a decibel higher than a whisper. "What was that, Terry? Did you have something to say?" Natalia went from psychotic cartoon to school bully. She made my skin crawl. "I was only a child, but those people were friends of my parents. They were good people," Terry said, with slightly more confidence. None of the other people had moved. They just stood there staring. "Why would you burn people alive? What can you possibly gain?" I interjected, taking a slight step between Natalia and Terry and the kids. I could see she was getting ready to go for them, and I couldn't let it happen. "We were living with the great leader, Michael. All of us, living in the righteous manner that he had directed us to live." She gestured to the people around her. The name Michael appeared to inspire some sort of emotion in the group. "Michael's brother Jonathan lived here, on the floor we burned. He let us hang out there sometimes, but he didn't live the righteous way that we did. He didn't like our beliefs, but he took us in when we lost the place we were staying because of the growth of the group. Him and Michael rarely saw eye to eye. They argued passionately. Our group never believed in living within the constraints of societal norms, and we were up at all hours. We came and went as we pleased, embracing freedoms and listened to music as we did introspective work." Terry shoved the kids further behind her and snapped, infuriated. "You were a group of entitled, bratty hippies following some middle-aged, mentally ill twat. Listen to yourself. The stereotypical cultish drivel coming out of your mouth right now," Terry cried. I was shocked at her outburst, although I couldn't have agreed more. It did sound like cultish drivel. It made me so angry that this was what an entire floor of people died over. As Terry ended her rant, the curtains hanging on the window behind her burst into flames. I jumped and felt my heart skip a beat. "Don't insult us. I'm sick of hearing simple-minded people call us a cult, came from the back row. An average-looking man with dark hair and jeans had piped up, smiling and watching the curtains burn. He had done that. They were all capable of what Natalia had done to Georgia, at the very least. For the first time since the people had entered Terry's flat, my nerves of steel had wavered. I realized that we were only alive because they were allowing it so far. We were in big trouble. Terry swiftly shut up, and Natalia continued her story. Michael was the true leader, not like all the fakes you hear of in the news. The people you're talking about. He was teaching us to build a world of peace and harmony, but he didn't deny that in order to do that, you had to eradicate the non-believers. He taught us to embrace the bad in us, to harness it so that we could do extraordinary things. She smiled wickedly, as her hands glowed hot coals as she spoke. It may have sounded like cultish drivel, but Michael, being a total faker, wouldn't explain their powers. Things went wrong when someone went to the police after Michael and Jonathan had a terrible argument one night. When the police arrived, Jonathan told us to go. The group had been planning to leave this building anyway. We'd had nothing but interruption and trouble in our time here. This place is weird, but we had nowhere immediate to go. The police already disliked us after overcrowding the last property. We didn't need any more attention. Michael was furious. We brainstormed in a field for hours who could have done it. I personally suspected the next door neighbor, Mavis. The woman was so nosy, always knocking and asking us to keep noise down, interrupting our spiritual sessions. Michael couldn't make a certain judgment on the person who had done it. All we thought we were sure of was that they had to be on the same floor. So he instructed us to go back that night and eradicate the whole floor and every non-believer who lived there. As you know, we obliged. This incited sick laughter from the crowd. I waited, forcing myself to let her finish, buying time. We took pleasure in their screams, in watching every man, woman and child go up in flames through their front door windows. It was the first time we'd unleashed all that energy, and we felt so powerful. But then, as we left the burning hallway behind us and entered the stairwell, this building found a way to fuck us over one more time. I couldn't give you a number on the amount of times we tried to run down those stairs, leave our glorious victory behind us, and return to Michael. It didn't matter how many times we tried. We couldn't make it past that floor. The stairs wouldn't let us. It didn't take long before the fire reached the stairwell we were trapped in, burning us all, along with the non-believers. We died just in time for the fire engine to arrive. We may have been dead, but we didn't disappear. We couldn't leave the building. We were stuck just wandering it, in and out of the burned flats and hallways, but not allowed anywhere else unless we were asked. It was awful. We didn't try to cause any trouble at first. We waited for Michael to come and find us, instruct us. 2 months passed and he hadn't come. Instead came confirmation. A newspaper put through the door of the building. Headline news: Tower Block resident Bernie Hemmings information vital to imprisonment of local cult leader on drug charges. I gasped. I couldn't believe I hadn't found that when I was researching Prue. But I suppose local news wasn't so heavily online back then. Natalia saw my shocked expression and grinned wider than before. The old bat didn't tell you that then? She asked, although it wasn't really a question. That her stupid husband is the whole reason we're here. We started to really cause issues then. Did anything within our power to fuck the whole building over. But it didn't take them long to work out that we had to be asked to come in. We only stopped when Prue worked out a way we could die a second time, and that we wound come back again. She killed 2 of our group. She was the only person that could stop us. We couldn't do shit with her around. We stopped and reached a stalemate. Then she moved out. We were going to honor that stalemate until you stabbed me. Prue's gone. It's fair game here now. As Natalia got angrier, A member of her group started getting agitated. They all soon followed, like a hive mind, working as one. The stillness became chaotic, with all of them moving and making noise. I didn't notice at first when one started walking towards Terry and the kids, but I noticed when it got near. It was a teen girl, slender and pretty, but still unsettlingly average. As she got within a meter of the family, Ellie suddenly went rigid. The claws that replaced her fingernails grew longer and sharper, with jagged edges from growing so fast. The voids deepened, if that was even possible. She opened her mouth to reveal rows of sharp teeth, blood caked where the tooth meets the gum, where they had grown too quickly as well. Ellie jumped. She reached out towards the girl and slashed her face with the claws, leaving deep gouges across her eyes. She clung on to the girl using her claws as wall pegs, keeping herself at eye level. Eddie controlled the crowd. His own claws grew and he ran towards them, sending them scattering out of the flat. Random bursts of flames erupted everywhere, lighting up the whole room. Shit had hit the fan. The two demon children were successfully fending off a group of 15 dead, superhuman cultists. Natalia ran from them too, but kept her eyes locked on mine as she did. As she ran from the flat, she spoke to me. "This isn't over," she screamed, and I knew that it wasn't. I stayed on Terry's sofa that night. We organized all the burned items in the house and threw things out before we crashed out in the early hours. The kids' claws retracted and they returned to their earlier state, causing mischief in the hallways. They were too young to really understand. I didn't sleep much, nothing new. When I woke up, Terry was still asleep. I didn't want to disturb her, so I walked back to my flat, desperate to avoid anything strange on my way. The stairs must have noticed, because they didn't skip on my way up. I hadn't checked the time when I left Terry's, but I reached my door at the same time as a familiar face. Postman Ian was standing there, dropping letters on my doorstep. "Hey, love," he shouted as he noticed me. "I need to talk. Can you come inside? Just 5 minutes, please?" I practically begged him at the doorstep. I told him everything that had happened the night before. How Natalia was out for revenge, and I was the object of her rage. I begged him to tell me how to kill them, but he claimed he didn't know. He said if I kept my doors locked and didn't let them in, then I'd be fine. He looked shirty as I mentioned killing them. Didn't even suggest asking Prudence how to do it. Something was telling me there wasn't much point. He seemed so disingenuous. I wanted to trust him. So badly I wanted to trust him. I'd been so vulnerable with him over Jamie, but if Prudence Hemmings could forget to mention what Bernie had done, and conveniently never pass on the method to kill these awful people, leaving them around to terrorize her friends and neighbors, then could she be a liar too? Could I really trust Ian? When he provided no answers and no real help, something inside me told me that I needed to get him out of my flat. I needed to rethink, start working things out on my own. I made excuses to Ian and sent him on his rounds. Prudence left me these rules, but she left so much out. How do I know I wasn't always a pawn in some sick game? Her fantasy life as a puppet master, setting me up to fail. She's kept her granddaughter in a cage for years. Maybe she enjoys suffering. I wasn't going to give up easily though. Natalia wasn't going to win. I decided then and there that I needed to attend the committee meeting today and start building an army against Natalia. I didn't need Prue's help or her methods. With enough manpower, I could do it myself. This was war. I sat all morning thinking about everything, cup after cup of coffee in front of me to keep me awake. Once the postman had left, and I was alone with my thoughts, they just continued to get louder. I thought about Natalia and the cult, about the kids and their nighttime antics, about the committee meeting. Jamie and how much I missed him, Georgia and my burning guilt, and Mr. Prentice, who was finally making those aforementioned animal noises. Most of all, I thought about the note left for me on move-in day, how it had changed everything. My whole life was different now. I was alone, and it felt like my new home was attacking from every angle. I reread the notes a few times over my coffee. I worried about my rent. It was tight, but manageable. School is currently out in the UK, but as a training teacher assigned to a school, I still get paid a small amount through the summer. The rent is low, and with a second summer job, I can just about make it without Jamie. It sounds strange, but it felt nice to worry about something normal for a minute. Even if I should have been worrying about my survival and the many entities currently trying to kill me, I didn't get to stew for too long. I had to get ready for the committee meeting. After the events of the night before and my growing mistrust of Prudence, it was imperative that I got the neighbors on side if I was going to achieve anything like my goals of eradicating the imposter cultist neighbors. The meeting was at noon in flat 31. There was a poster on a communal notice board by the entrance that I was glad to spot. Terry hadn't mentioned the time when we met, and all our meetings since had been a bit hectic to discuss. The poster promised tea and cakes, and my stomach rumbled at the thought I hadn't eaten properly in days. At 11:55, I left the flat and wandered out into the corridor. I'd never seen so many neighbors. Mr. Prentice, however, was still making that awful noise, and I watched in disbelief as every single person in the corridor walked past his door as if it was silent. I did my usual deliberation on whether to take the stairs or lift, but yet again the stairs won. I still couldn't bear being where Jamie died, and all these extra flights were keeping me fit. Flat 31 belonged to an older lady named Molly Thompson and her husband Eric. She had a blue rinsed head of curls attached to her head and had gone to the effort to make homemade Battenberg cake. Other neighbors had bought baked goods as well. It reminded me of a school fair. The flat itself was decorated for the 70s, with plenty of china cat ornaments littered around. I sat down on a dusty plastic garden chair, one of many that Molly seemed to have acquired and laid out for the residents pouring in. I hadn't seen community spirit like this in my life. I smiled as I saw Terry, Eddie, and Ellie wander in. It was nice to see some familiar faces. I'd noticed people looking at me, wondering who I was. It probably wasn't often they got new neighbors. Eddie came running up to me, swung his arms round me, and sat down in the rickety garden chair next to mine. It was so sweet. Terry smiled at me and took a seat the other side of mine. Ellie sat next to her brother. The brown puppy dog eyes were back, no claws. "I'm glad you came," Terry said to me, loud enough to hear over the voices of the other neighbors. "I really want you to see the good side of the block. We don't bite, really." She laughed nervously as she realized the irony of her statement. "Terry, I need help. We need to stop those people from coming back again and from terrorizing people. The block can't go on like this." I wanted to make the purpose of my attendance clear to her. It was time for things to change. But if you don't let them in, then they don't bother you. I've spoken to the kids. They know not to do it again, that those people are dangerous. She paused for a moment and sighed. Although running away didn't help, the kids think they're indestructible now. They've been telling me all morning that they're going to kill the bad guys. She looked so resigned. But it was true. They did run away from the twins. Maybe there was something in that. I knew they could die. I just had to work out how. But as the thought crossed my mind and I looked at Eddie and Ellie, I couldn't imagine taking the risk. I could have flat out gone back and asked Prudence. But to be honest, I didn't want anything to do with her. She gave me such a bad feeling. I was doubting everything she told me. It doesn't matter if you can keep them away. We can't all live in fear. Yours aren't the only kids in this building. I knew this from surveying the room, but I bet not all the kids here are as special as yours. What if another family burns to death because their kids were hyper one night? I could see this struck a chord with Terry. She looked at me with glassy eyes, as if on the verge of tears. You're right. Molly's the chairwoman, and she can be a little strict, but you can bring it up under any other business. She spoke with a lump in her throat. Here you go, by the way. She handed me a piece of printed paper. Any other business felt a bit lackluster, but it would do, as long as it got discussed. I turned my attention. The piece of paper. It was the agenda for the meeting. For something written so formally, it appeared farcical. It seemed other flats and floors had different but equally strange issues to mine. There were only 6 items on the agenda for the meeting with AOB as the 7th. They were as follows. 1. Welcome and introductions with apologies for absence. 2. Replacing of the flickering lights on floor 11, it seems to incite vicious behavior from the pets and elderly of that floor. 3. Serving a formal residence letter of concern to the man who doesn't move from the bottom of the stairwell on floor 5. 4. Finances, budgets for general maintenance and the annual barbecue. 5. The stairs with no grip leading up to floor 14 at the very top and the health and safety hazards this presents. 6. Soundproofing of Mr. Prentice's flat, number 48. I was comforted to know that I wasn't alone in dealing with all these strange occurrences. I was also chilled to the core to know for certain that it was the entire building that was more than a bit odd. What really struck me as odd is that when I thought about it, I had seen that man on floor 5 when going down the stairs, but I'd never noticed that it had been every time, or that he had never moved until this moment. The meeting began with a loud and dissatisfying clink. By this point, the tiny 70s-themed flat was packed. Garden chairs had all run out and people were standing. Molly Thompson stood up from her floral patterned armchair and bashed a teaspoon against the outside of her cup. She reminded me of a very strict disciplinarian schoolteacher I had worked with during my university placement. She commanded quiet in the room. I think we should get started, everyone, she shrilled, her voice growing louder with every word until the crowd came to a silent hum. Right, firstly, we are not going to skip the introductions today. Apologies have been given by Joe and Steph of Flat 2, and yet again by Mr. Prentice. We have a new face in the room, as I'm sure many of you have noticed. She gestured to me and looked in my direction, but didn't really make any eye contact. She was just talking about me as I sat in the room. Eventually, she addressed me directly. Stand up, dear. Introduce yourself. We are pleased to have you here. I was deeply uncomfortable. I could feel some sort of panic coming on. I never liked standing in crowds very much, but I stood up anyway. Hi. My name is Kat. I live in flat number 42. I moved in with my boyfriend Jamie, but he was killed in the lift by the weird rat creatures you people have living here. The people that claim to live in the burned out flats won't leave me alone, and one in particular seems to want me dead. Oh, and that window cleaner outside my flat makes me want to scoop my own eyes out with a spoon every time he knocks on the door. Nice to meet you all. The crowd had gasped a little. I sat down, instantly mortified. I don't know what happened. The normality and structure of the meeting overwhelmed me. There's something about a sense of order and normality amongst chaos. It does something to your brain, and for me, for the first time in this whole journey, it sent me into a meltdown. I sobbed as I hit the chair, both in pure mental exhaustion and disappointment that I had blown my chance at building any sort of army against Natalia. Terry rubbed my shoulder. Molly broke the awkward silence that had blanketed the room. Nice to meet you, Catherine. I understand life in this building can be a little overwhelming. We did ask the previous occupant to let us intervene when you moved in, but she was insistent. In hindsight, we may need to review our policies on new tenants. I am so very sorry for the loss of your partner. The lift is a most unfortunate situation. She had been in positions of power in her life for certain. She responded professionally but coldly. There was no feeling in her condolences. She came off like a corrupt politician digging themselves out of a hole. She did decide to skip the introductions after my outburst. I also hate it when I'm called Catherine. My parents named me Katie, and I shorten it to Cat. Her presuming it was Catherine added to her schoolteacher demeanor. She carried on with the proceedings pretty swiftly, and interesting characters present at the meeting started to emerge. My favorite was a large, middle-aged Caribbean woman named Precious St. Fleur, who would not accept Molly's claims that there was not enough in the budget to replace the lighting on floor 11. She got up and lifted her shirt to reveal a large, deep bite mark across her stomach caused by her dog after a long episode of the lights flickering. When that didn't change Molly's answer, she lifted her trouser leg to reveal a smaller, but still noteworthy bite mark on her leg from her elderly mother who lives with her. Molly didn't budge. It took what felt like an eternity to get to any other business. If I weren't so focused on my goal, I would have enjoyed hearing about the quirks of the other floors, maybe tried to engage a little, but I just couldn't concentrate. When the chairwoman asked if anyone had any other business, she scanned the room quickly. I stood up from my chair and she locked in on me with her eyes. My hands were shaking and I could feel a cold sweat forming all over my body. "Catherine, what can we help you with, dear?" she asked in a patronizing tone. "I want help in getting rid of the people pretending to be from the burned out flats. I can't be the only person that doesn't like living in fear," I stated boldly, trying not to break down again. "Dear, we have had this discussion multiple times, and it's been taken off the agenda. I am aware you're new here, but there is nothing we can do about certain problems within this building, and for this particular issue, we would appreciate you not letting them into your home and ignoring them like the rest of us." She snapped back. "But that's not good enough. Terry's kids answered the door last night. They're children. It's easily done. What if someone else's child does it and aren't so lucky to survive? One burned my friend so bad a few nights ago that she's still unconscious in hospital. This I knew from social media. A few people called out in agreement with me from the crowd. The only one who has ever been able to deal with them is Prudence, and that difficult woman never revealed her methods. Don't think we didn't try. You're suggesting a suicide mission. You'd do well to remember you are new here." Molly hissed through her teeth. Did she have to mention I was new so many times? It was grating on me. "Well, I'm willing," shouted Precious. She seemed stronger than the rest in her earlier rant. I was glad to have her on side. Where she came forward, a few others followed. Soon I had 5 people plus myself willing to form a subcommittee to get rid of the cultists. Molly didn't like it, but she agreed to let us do it. There was me, Precious, and Terry, along with a lady named Shanti who lived a few doors from me. A man named Anton and his friend Leo from floor 8 made up the group. To be honest, they just seemed keen to get involved with any kind of battle. Leo was the loud one. Anton was mostly silent. I invited them to my flat after Molly swiftly adjourned the meeting. Inviting anyone into my home made me anxious now. I found myself studying each of their faces to ensure they weren't too average and I hadn't invited the wrong people in. I was fairly certain I hadn't. Eddie and Ellie settled in front of my TV in the bedroom so they didn't hear our conversation. They may only be kids, but I felt safer with them there. We discussed for hours how we could bring the imposter people into one place and kill them all. Leo was particularly creative. He came up with weird and wacky ways to end them, from locking them in a room and blasting them with fire extinguishers until they freeze, to herding them into the lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m. The whole time I waited nervously for a knock on the door for them to come for us, but they didn't. We got time to plan. But despite the time it never really took off, no idea seemed feasible. I shared everything I knew. My conversation with Prue the night before in Terry's flat. Everything. Precious listened to my tales intently before speaking. Derek would have helped us. He was a great man. He used to turn up at my door in the dead of the night just as those lights started and take my dog for a walk. She spoke of the gardener with a fondness. Prudence told me about Derek. She said he's been gone since the garden was demolished. I replied flatly. It was awful when he left. That woman that used to live here was nasty to him. I watched out my window as she tore up the garden. I know she was grieving for that little girl, but I know Derek only ever wanted to help. Shanti spoke up from the corner. She had been pretty quiet the whole time. He was the whole reason we don't have those awful creatures from the lift all over our homes anymore. My brother was killed by one before the agreement. He was 4 years old. I twitched as she told her story. Shanti has such sad eyes, and speaking about her brother only filled them further with sadness. This is another thing I don't understand. Why have any agreement? If you managed to kill most of them, why not all? I asked, feeling anger over Jamie burn through my throat as I spoke. Precious laughed. Terry shot her a look from across the room. No one told you the whole story, have they? Shanti asked, a single tear running down her face. What do you mean? This was driving me insane. Nothing was simple. How could I trust anyone? When Prudence and some of the others killed the creatures, they killed a large group of them in one hit. They had started to work out that food scraps and pet food were attracting them, and they gathered all the pet food in the tower block into one empty flat on the floor. The fire had happened. The creatures came in droves, just like expected, and they set the flat alight. Again, the flat was burned to ash on top of pre-existing ash. Nothing could survive that. Shanti was interrupted after this by Leo, and then 3 giant rat motherfuckers literally rose from the ashes. Triple as smart and strong and fucked shit up, he said, a look of excitement on his face. Shanti rolled her eyes and continued. So, all Prudence did was cause a quite literally bigger problem. She didn't kill them. All she did was help them evolve. There was only 3 of them, but they learned to sneak attack. More people died than during the original infestation. They were more intelligent, but not in the way it comes across when the agreements were spoken about. We couldn't speak to or reason with them. Terry was looking at the floor. Only Derek was able to do that. He spoke to them like he spoke to the garden. He made it safe for everyone again. I wasn't there. I was too young. But there we were told he didn't even have to use words. They understood just a series of movements and eye contact. Derek explained the rule with the lift. He told us it was a gesture of goodwill. The creatures needed a home and seemed attracted to the building, and we would let them live there and stop killing their kind if they would stop killing ours. But to show them some respect, we would allow them a small time frame where they unleash their instinctual nature, but only if someone came to them. There are only 2 left now. Prudence killed the other during what happened with her granddaughter, but that only made them 2 stronger, like they absorbed the 3rd. I tried to take in all the information I was receiving, but I couldn't. It was too much. Derek isn't coming back. It's been years. This is pointless, Terry finally erupted. Precious laughed again. How do you know? You speak to dear old Prue all the time. Know something we don't? Precious spoke sarcastically, but I think she meant what she said. It was becoming clear that Prudence Hemmings wasn't too popular in this building. I don't speak to her all the time. We just keep in contact. She was always nice to me. Terry tried weakly to defend herself. That's because you're naive and a pushover. She used you because no one else would give her the time of day." Precious was about to launch into a full rant on Terry. I was glad Eddie and Ellie were in the other room and couldn't hear. I wondered if she'd seen them at night. I decided to stop the rant. This was becoming counterproductive, and we were getting nowhere with our plans. I interjected and told them all I needed them to leave so that I could sleep. Partly true, although I knew I couldn't sleep. I had other things to do. They all filed out of my flat. Terry and the kids were the last to leave. She gave me a hug as she left and told me to get a proper night's rest, telling me she was always there for a cuppa and a chat. It was sweet. I felt sorry for Terry. The kids hugged me too as they left. I know she spoke to Prue, but I was certain that it really was entirely innocent. I sat in the empty flat, disheartened that my assembling of an army had turned into a bickering shit show with no real suggestions on how to kill the imposter neighbors. I felt totally alone. I couldn't trust Prue or Ian or pretty much anything I thought I knew. Maybe Prue didn't even kill those neighbors. They only told me half-truths about the creatures after all. I was left alone with my thoughts again, and after a few hours, a good one finally struck me, but I needed supplies. I left the building and went to the nearest shop to gather the items I needed. For what I needed, in the time of night, I had to travel to a 24-hour supermarket. It took half an hour each way on the bus, but I stayed focused. My bags were heavy and awkward on the way back to the block, but if it paid off, this was going to be worth it. I trudged up the stairs. It took me 2 trips and 24 flights of stairs, instead of 14 to get everything in my flat and organize myself. It only took 16 and a large gym bag that was much easier to carry on the way back down, thankfully. I passed the man on floor 5 twice. Now I'd noticed him. He made my skin crawl a little. I walked through the downstairs corridor, diverting away from the main entrance and passing all the ground floor flats to the door at the back of the building. The door at the back led to a small concrete area with a grass strip along the side and a bench decorated with a memorial plaque. This was the block's outside space. As is typical in the city, the whole bench was covered in graffiti. The memorial was unreadable. I got to work. I dug the strip of grass, turning soil with my new equipment. I had never been green-fingered, and to be honest, the shrubs I had bought had been so heavy, I had grown to resent them a little. I worked for an hour and a half. I was sweating and night had come. It was pitch black, and I was using my phone torch to see. I had almost given up until I got up from my crouching position to stretch my knees. I reached my arms out, put down my shovel, and took a seat on the bench. I hadn't seen him arrive, but the man was already sat there. He wore a flat cap and a jacket. Despite it being the middle of summer and a beautiful night, he just smiled warmly at the shrubs for a moment, without a word. Eventually, he spoke. "I've missed this place. Name's Derek." Kat's fight isn't over yet, but with Derek back, she might just have a chance. What secrets will the gardener reveal, and can he help her end this nightmare once and for all?